Amanda Quintanilla, Victim Services Specialist with UTRGV Police Department. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is acknowledging victims within the legal system in Cameron County, and we are keeping the conversation relevant, and working together with community agencies is definitely a step in the right direction. And we are going to continue to bring awareness to domestic violence. Priscilla Palacios, the Associate Director of Special Programs from OVAP, and I are joined by two awesome and very hardworking and dedicated individuals. We're grateful that they were able to take time from their busy schedule. They are from the Cameron County District Attorney's Office. So thank you, and I'm going to have Priscilla take it from here, and she's going to go over the trigger warning.
Good afternoon, everybody. Like Amanda said, my name is Priscilla, and I am with the Office for Advocacy and Violence Prevention at UTRGV. And just to start off, we like to start it off with a trigger warning for everyone. The content of the discussion today could be troubling, especially for survivors of violence, victimization, or harassment. Please feel free to leave the discussion if the trigger is an upsetting response. Please treat this session as a safe space and respect the boundaries of others, especially if their views or experiences are clearly troubling to them. And of course, just some objectives to go over for today. We hope to gain an understanding of how the legal system is involved when it comes to domestic violence issues. We want to recognize how advocates can be helpful and beneficial during the criminal justice process. And of course, we want to identify all the resources available to us in our community and on our campus community. And joining us today, of course, with the Cameron County District Attorney's Office is Arturo Villarreal and Yvette Vela. If you all mind introducing yourselves and saying a little bit about yourselves.
Sure, no problem. My name is Art Villarreal. I was raised in the La Feria area here in the Valley. I graduated from La Feria High School. I got my bachelor's degree from what was then UT Pan American in Edinburgh, and my law degree in Austin at the University of Texas. I've been working here at the DA's office off and on for about the last 4 years. And I'm currently serving as the supervisor of the domestic violence unit and as the chief prosecutor in that unit as well.
My name is Yvette Vela. I'm the community education specialist with the Cameron County District Attorney's Office. My position is also attached to the crime victims unit, so I also jump in as a crime victims advocate when needed. I'm a product of BISD schools, born and raised in Brownsville, Texas, and I've been with the DA's office now for 5 years.
Well, thank you for joining us, both of y'all, today on this very important topic. We do know October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so we want to continue providing all this great information to our community out there, not just on our campus, but our community as a whole. So just before we begin and we start the conversation, I just want to let everybody know that domestic violence, of course, can be described in many different ways, and we just put something quickly together. I know Amanda put these together for us. What domestic violence is: a violent or aggressive behavior within the home, typically involving a violent abuse of a spouse or partner. It can be a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one partner to gain or maintain control over another intimate partner. And of course, you should also understand that it's not only just physical, but can include sexual, emotional, psychological, which can include threats, stalking, and cyber stalking as part of the abuse. And of course, we want to make sure and also let people know that it doesn't always mean that it's a spouse. It can include a dating or an intimate partner, a family member, children, or even somebody you live with. And so to start it off with, Art, what is the Cameron County Domestic Violence Unit, and how long has it been in existence, and who's part of your unit?
The Domestic Violence Unit is a subset within the elected district attorney's office. Right now, we have a team of 4 individuals: myself, a misdemeanor prosecutor, an investigator, and a paralegal. What we do is we evaluate cases as they're coming in, and then we assign them to either stay in the domestic violence unit or to go to the line prosecutors. The DV unit, as far as I can tell from the records that we have, was in existence as far back as 2006. This particular elected district attorney took office, I believe, in 2013.
Yes.
And so it's certainly been in existence since then.
Wow, it doesn't seem like a long time, but it is quite a few years. So that's great to hear that y'all have been around. How about the victims unit, Yvette? How long has that been in existence, and how many advocates are part of that unit?
So our crime victims unit has been in existence for a little over 20 years. Right now we have 7 advocates, including myself, that assist all the victims that come through our office. And much like Art said, we are all divided by the courts. We have advocates that handle the misdemeanor crimes. We have advocates that handle the felony crimes. And like I said, we have 8 advocates and a supervisor. Her name is Liliana Mendez, and she's the coordinator for our unit.
Great. That's great to hear that there's so many people willing to help out our community out there. So where are y'all located? Where are they both in the same building? Where are both units located?
Yeah, we're in the same building as the elected district attorney, which is 964 East Harrison. We are literally attached to the courthouse. And so that's here in Brownsville, obviously.
Our unit as well is, we're right down the hall from Art's unit. I do have a satellite office at Texas Southmost College. However, unfortunately, right now, due to COVID, we are closed down. But prior to pre-COVID, as people say now, I would be there once a week, and I would be open to speak to teachers, student, anybody in the staff who just had any questions about our office.
Wow, that's great to hear. I'm glad, and I know you're so close by our offices or our university there, so it's great to know that they can easily just cross the street and go visit you all. Well, hopefully soon when you all reopen again.
Yes.
When COVID, of course, hopefully one day disappears. So what about, I know we're talking about COVID now, so what has changed with COVID? I know a lot of people still take safety precautions and are still doing safety measures. Is that changed with you all as well?
Well, we very much are still being mindful of the intake, right? As who comes into the office. We like to do a lot of like pre-screening, as they say. We encourage anybody who has any questions regarding protective orders to call the office first. Again, the advocates are usually assigned to the different courts. So a lot of the times we have already made contact with the victim prior to them being assigned to a court. So everything, a lot of the initial interviews or meetings are done over the phone.
And so I'm guessing it's the same thing within your unit, correct? Art, like.
Yes, we try to limit the number of people who come in, and we definitely rely on their honesty as far as whether or not they've been vaccinated, whether or not they are currently experiencing symptoms. We try to make sure, because not only do we want to avoid getting ourselves infected and then it spreading through the office, but we also, if one of us were to be carrying the virus, we certainly don't want to be shedding that on members of the public.
Great, that's great to hear. It's great to hear that everybody's still taking those safety precautions into consideration, and we want, of course, our community to be safe. So I know when we hear about domestic violence, a lot of the times we say we reference a woman. We do know and understand, and we want to make it clear to our audience that we do understand that domestic violence affects everybody. So with that being said, what's the population that you work with there at your office, as with the prosecutor's office? Are there certain ages you see the most? Is it a variety of mixture of, just give us a background of people who go in and require services with both offices?
Well, an overview of the statistics shows us that most victims are between 25 and 35 years old. That is the population that we see the most of as far as victims. Offenders can be usually a little older. That's from 30 to 40. But it doesn't exclude the extremes. We get victims, adult victims as young as 17 and as old as, in their 90s. It can happen at any age to anyone. At the beginning, you stated there that domestic violence is not only exclusively romantic partners or spouses, but additional family, and that's true. It can include grandchildren, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, even people related by marriage. So we see pretty much the broad spectrum. There's really no one type of person or one age group that victims come from.
Wow, that's great to hear. I know Amanda was going to say something. Sorry, Amanda.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say to our audience watching, just please remember that, the topic's very sensitive. If you need to leave the room, please do. But we always have resources available. And at the end of the water cooler, we'll have the resource information up as well. So I'm going to jump right in there, Art, and ask, how, or Yvette, whichever wants to tackle the question, how does a victims unit work with the DV unit? How do you all collaborate?
Well, typically what will happen is a law enforcement agency will have make an arrest, and they'll create a file, and they bring that file to our office. We get it first. We review the information. We decide whether or not we're going to proceed with the prosecution. Sometimes there isn't enough evidence there. When there is, I will reach out to the crime victims unit supervisor and have her reach out to the victims to speak with them before we send the file to the grand jury. Because if we have a victim who does not want us to proceed, we want to make sure we factor that in. Or if we have a victim who for some reason can't proceed, we want to make sure and know that ahead of time. Very frequently, though, that is the time when victims are the most susceptible to influence, and we want to make sure that we let them know they are not alone, that we are there for them, and that our crime victims advocates are there to help provide them with a sense of empowerment and with access to resources that will help them pay the bills, manage their finances, all the things that generally the abuser takes charge of, to try to keep them in that victimized state. So the Crime Victim Advocates Group is very helpful in kind of creating that rapport with victims as our cases go forward.
Yvette, you want to jump in and tell us a little bit about the kind of services that the victims unit provides?
So we are, I tend to think that we're one of the most resourceful agencies here in Cameron County. We don't have licensed practicing counselors with us, right? A lot of the times these victims need counseling, but what we do is we kind of create that safe space for them. Like, okay, from here on, we're going to be in this together. So we try to tailor whatever needs they might need and guide them in that direction. Whether it's counseling, whether it's a shelter service, whether it's even, finding jobs for them, helping them create, resumes and just guiding them in that direction. I think we're very blessed in Cameron County that we have a lot of wonderful agencies that we partner up with, like Friendship of Women, Maggie and Monica's House. There's just endless, right? And we're all here to help. So we just kind of, for lack of a better term, just kind of streamline the whole process for an already overwhelmed individual.
That's a lot. And that's awesome that you're able to collaborate with so many agencies that are willing and able to help the community. Now, what are the kinds of domestic violence cases that you as a prosecutor mainly come across?
Oh, how much time do we have?
I know. I know.
You know what?
As much as you can give us.
There's too many to go into a whole lot of detail, but some of the similarities that they have across the board is that generally, whether they're spouses or dating or formerly dating, generally we see someone who has been drinking, and the jealousy that they harbor inside is loosed, and they start searching through people's phones, and they start questioning fidelity, and the argument escalates into physical violence, and ultimately, after statistically it's after 7 instances, a victim reports it to police, and then they come to us. But we see college age kids, a lot of them. We see recently married spouses or people who just got together recently, haven't figured out how to live together calmly and respectfully. And we see, unfortunately, we see a lot of victims who come from homes in which one of their parents was a victim. So the cycle is repeating over and over again, and they feel like this is normal. And so one of the things we try to let our victims know is, no, this is not normal. It is not how, one of my boss says, love should never hurt. And we try to really emphasize that, that is not love. That is just survival, ownership, and possessiveness. And these domestic violence cases are usually about control and usually about the aggressor being insecure and, accusing the victim of the things that the aggressor himself, maybe a female, but usually a male, is guilty of themselves. They're projecting it onto their victim and taking it out on them.
Jeez. Now, and we know Priscilla and I see it all the time, but we just felt it was necessary, for you to touch on that a little bit so that our audience could know. Now, to be clear, if anybody were to need services, whether they're a victim or their attorney, right? There are no fees, correct?
None.
Because sometimes people get confused.
We do not charge any fees at all. However, if we guide them to an external counseling service,
Right.
we mostly work with services that offer indigent programs, right?
Okay.
Because just to put, again, not any pressure on an individual who's already very overwhelmed, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I know you had mentioned the word protective order earlier. I do want to go back to that because a lot of times people throw the word restraining order and protective order, not aware that they're completely different. So if you want to tell us what that is, and also how do you go about obtaining one?
Well, a restraining order and a protective order are similar in that you're trying to get the other person to not do something, okay? In this context, it would be, commit an act of violence or threat or stalking, but it can be for a variety of things. Restraining orders generally, though, are civil in nature, and I'm talking about civil law versus criminal law. Those are enforceable by court order. So if I have a restraining order against Yvette, for example, and she violates it, I have to go to court. I, the private citizen, have to go to court. I have to file some documents, have the court bring her in to explain to her why it is in her best interest not to do that again. And there may be fines involved. A protective order is very different in that it is a criminally enforceable order. If I have a protective order against Yvette and she violates that order by coming within the prescribed distance or by contacting me, they will come arrest her immediately. And so that is a huge difference. That's one of the things a lot of people don't understand and appreciate, that a protective order is actually a much more powerful tool for someone who's under stress in the moment. You can get help right away by calling 911, and you tell the 911 operator, I have a protective order and Yvette is violating it, and come get her. And they will come and arrest that person. So it's a powerful tool, and not to be confused with the form or the restraining order.
Right. And with the restraining order, that would be through a private attorney, correct?
An attorney isn't required. It's best to use an attorney, but a private citizen can go online. There are a number of websites from the state government that have the documents that you can do that. A person can do that. I would never advise that. I would advise them to hire an attorney if they can, just to make sure.
Right. It's a long process. It can be very overwhelming. So understandable. Now, how do you go about obtaining one in Cameron County, or what kind of requirements are there? What about, does a person need to take in any sort of documentation with them?
We're talking about protective orders, right?
Yes, the protective orders.
So the first step would be to contact our office, and then they'll do an intake interview, and we'll evaluate your case. Protective orders are not available to just anyone for any reason. You have to be the victim of domestic violence. There are also a different kind of protective order, a lifetime protective order, available for victims of sexual assault or for victims of stalking, which a lot of folks don't know, and a lot of stalkers don't appreciate, is that if one of these protective orders is in place, it is for the lifetime of the stalker. And so they are prohibited and can be sent to prison or county jail, depending on the circumstances, for violating one of those. So step one is contact our office, do the intake. Step two, which follows, will be filing that case on behalf of the applicant, and then appearing in court on behalf of the applicant to get the order signed.
Okay. Now, when it comes to police reports or information reports with the police department, are those necessary to apply for a protective order?
They're helpful.
Okay.
When we do our application and when we help the applicant fill out their affidavit, we want to give the court as much data as possible, as much accurate
Right.
data. So if we have a series of reports, we can say on January 31st, this happened, this happened, this
Mhm.
report was filed. On March 2nd, this happened, this report was filed. And we can create a chronology, especially with stalking protective orders.
Right.
If those involve a pattern of behavior, we want to be able to show the court this pattern of behavior that is the prerequisite for getting a protective order.
Okay, good. That's some great information. Now, when it comes to the victims unit, do you all work with other police departments that have crime victim liaisons that also assist victims and survivors?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Again, we're very fortunate here in Cameron County that we have an excellent working relationship with all the police departments in
Wonderful.
Cameron County. So we have liaisons that are assigned to particular PDs,
Okay.
but for the most part, everybody has an open dialogue with all the police departments. So there's not one particular person assigned to any given thing, really. We can all
Okay.
kind of jump in and help anywhere. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Now, what kind of outreach do your all's offices do? Because I know you have the domestic violence unit, you have the victims unit, but what about the outreach? Do you all do it together? Is it separate?
So I like to say that October is a very busy month for our domestic violence unit.
Yes.
I do, and which is great because they're eager to go out there. I understand that it is very hard for them to kind of double book in a lot of ways because Art has court, but on any given day, he'll have court and a presentation with me somewhere in Cameron County.
Mhm.
I do a lot of the outreach myself year round. Every month I try to focus on the hot topic,
Mhm.
this month is domestic violence, which in February is equally as busy for us because it's teen dating violence.
Right.
So, there are 6 high schools in Cameron County. I'm sorry, in Brownsville.
Mhm.
But we go to Harlingen, Los Fresnos, anywhere, Port Isabel, anywhere in between. Anybody that'll have us basically,
Okay.
we'll put a presentation on for them. And Art and Edward Sandoval, our first assistant, sometimes we'll tag team on the presentations, and they have an excellent PowerPoint. They kind of just gets the gears turning for the kids. Everything's age appropriate. We tailor it, obviously, but it's the high school kids have a lot to deal with right now. So we try to kind of open their minds to what troubles they can get into and also what help they can get.
Awesome. Now, these high schools and these presentations that you all do the high schools contact you all or do you all contact them? How does that work?
So it works both ways, right?
Oh, okay, wonderful.
A lot of the schools already have my contact information. So say for instance, Pace High School, Miss
Mhm.
Latta would call me. She's like, "Hey, Yvette, can you come to my campus this month?" Absolutely, we'll schedule that. We just had an event on Friday, a presentation where districts and campuses were calling the office wanting to schedule that same presentation. So any which way anybody can get a hold of me or I can get a hold of them,
Right.
we're there.
You're willing and able. That's
Oh,
great.
absolutely.
That's wonderful. That is so good. Because it's so important, especially the community outreach, and it's all about planting seeds.
It is.
So
It really
yeah,
is.
that's what it's about. I completely understand and agree with that. Now,
Interestingly that
yes.
you said that,
Mhm.
at this presentation we had recently, when we were done, we're doing some Q&A, and I was actually approached with a victim by a
Mhm.
victim who outcried about what she was going through. So planting that seed is absolutely one of the things that we want to do, and we want to make sure the victims know they can come forward.
Art, to a little bit to what he said, I feel like teachers are very overwhelmed right now. Kids are very overwhelmed right now.
Right.
So when we bring in a group of like 15, 20 police officers, all kind of wanting to talk to them, to know about them, to encourage them, I feel like that gets the kids thinking about like, okay, I can get help, or I can ask for help, or, maybe I could start learning a little bit more about what I'm getting myself into or not getting myself into.
No, that's true, because you never know. It could be for them, it could be for their parent, a cousin, and we've seen it. So I completely agree with that. Now, how about I want to talk a little bit about affidavits of non-prosecution. Just in case our audience doesn't know what they are, can you just explain what they are, please? And do you all do them at your office or do you not? How do you all go about them?
Those are the bane of my existence. Okay, so the
And explain
idea,
why.
oh no, you have to read my mind. No,
I know.
the idea behind an affidavit of non-prosecution is if a victim has a legitimate reason why they don't think the prosecution should proceed. Let's say, the fight happens, they're both drunk, and then the victim finally realizes after watching security videos that she is the one who instigated it. She is the one who picked up the bat and hit him first. That she is, she figures out prosecuting him is not the right thing to do. That is what those were designed for. What we see now in virtually 100% of our cases is a defense lawyer or the abuser themselves talk the victim into submitting one. That the submission of the affidavit is, in fact, typical behavior of a victim to try to look like they're on the defendant's side. In the event that somehow that defendant doesn't get prosecuted, gets cut loose, gets out on bond, that victim has to survive. And that victim has to be able to say to their abuser, hey, I tried to drop the charges. Hey, and so those are being used more frequently for that. Generally, I take them into consideration, but I'm not going to dismiss a case just because there's an affidavit of non-prosecution, because I understand all the circumstances under which someone might submit one. One story, something that happened to us recently is we had a victim come in to talk to us. She had submitted an affidavit of non-prosecution. In that affidavit, she said something along the lines of, he has never been violent. He has never struck me. He has never threatened me. This whole thing was a mistake. So I played the 911 call for her, in which she could barely speak because she had been choked for a considerable amount of time. You could tell she was struggling to get words out. She said, he's always threatening me. He's always hitting me. He puts on his gloves when he does this to not leave evidence. The difference between what was in the written affidavit of non-prosecution and the verbal statement she gave on the 911 recording is so different. It is impossible that they are both true. But I'm not going to hold that against her because I think I understand circumstances under which she might feel like she had to do the latter. And so for those kind of reasons, I'm not really moved by affidavits of non-prosecution.
Got it. That's a lot of good information that we had today. We're so grateful that you all took the time because, like you said, Yvette, you all have a busy month. I know I was in Cameron County with you all a couple of weeks ago, but we're very grateful. Priscilla is going to take us to the next slide right now so that you can see the resources that are available here on campus. Of course, remember that our services are always available. Please reach out for help. You might not be ready right now. That's okay. You can always just call and ask questions, just to start preparing. And then I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody for taking time to join us. Domestic violence, it might be, the awareness part might be coming to an end, but this topic is not. We're going to continue to do our part, collaborating with other departments, other agencies. We're grateful that you all joined us today. And Priscilla, you want to say anything before we leave? Or actually, Art or Yvette, would you like to say anything before we come to an end?
Well, thank you for having us. I really appreciate it. And I would encourage anybody who has any questions at all to just give us a call. This is what we're here for, to keep the dialogue open.
Exactly.
And I just want to say to the victims out there that we hear you. We really do hear you. One of the tools that abusers use is isolating their victims and getting them to think that nobody's going to believe them. We do. And I also wanted to say something to the perpetrators out there, or people who are prone to become violent. Take a pause. Think about what you're doing. There is help available to you to help keep it from escalating to violence. What we do is always after the fact. What I think we need to start focusing on is preventing the violence as opposed to responding to it.
Wise words, sir. Priscilla?
No, I just want to say thank you both for joining us today. If you all are interested, Arturo will be part of our CAVE conference in a couple, actually next week.
Friday. I know the month flew by.
I know. So please, if you're interested in joining us, he will be one of our panelists on one of our afternoon panels. So you're welcome to join us for on CAVE. It'll be on October 29th from, I believe, 9 to 5. Is that correct, Amanda? Somewhere
9 to 4.
9 to
With the
4
lunch break. It's virtual. Don't forget, it is virtual.
It's a virtual conference, yes. But thank you both, Arturo and Yvette, for joining us today, providing us all that great information. And like both said, if we're here to help, we're here to provide assistance. And if you all need anything, please give us a call and we'll be glad to assist you in any which way possible. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in Water Cooler Conversations. Our last Water Cooler will be in 2 weeks, and we will be talking to student accessibility from our campus and get a little bit of breakdown of what they do and how they work and how that department helps our campus community and making sure our students succeed in their education. Thank you both for joining us, and take care, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Be
Good
safe.
afternoon.